You're thinking about moving to Brainerd, Minnesota, and you've heard it's affordable, it's peaceful, and it's just far enough north of the Minneapolis area that you don't have all those crazy prices in that large metropolitan area. Well, in this video, I'm going to go ahead and break down some of the actual costs of living here in the Brainerd Lakes area in 2025, from housing, groceries, healthcare, and yes, the real price of lake life. And if you're relocating, buying a vacation home, or even thinking about just escaping from Twin Cities metro grind, or maybe visiting from another city, you're going to need to stick around and watch this video. All right, if this is your first time on the channel and you want to know everything about living in the Brainerd Lakes area, and make sure you subscribe below, tap that bell for notifications, and that way you're going to be the first to know what's the current market here in the Brainerd Lakes area and what's happening around the area. My name is Noah Gedker. We get calls, text, emails every day from people just like you looking to make their move to the lakes area, and we absolutely love it. So whether you're moving in 9 days or 9 months, reach out and we'd love to help you make a smooth move to the lakes area. All right, let's start with the big picture. According to Area Vibes, Brainerd's overall cost of living index is 6% lower than the national average. So what does that translate to? Well, your money goes further here. And unless you plan on spending it all on fishing gear and ice augers, that's some real savings. So you'll save most of the money on housing. It just kind of depends on your lifestyle, right? So we'll get into that, and you can use that data information to help you decide what factors will affect your cost of living here in the Brainerd Lakes area. You'll want to keep an eye out for groceries and heating costs, because those could add up pretty quick. So more on that in just a moment. All right, so as of early 2025 this year, the median listing price in the Brainerd Lakes area is $335,000 overall. Well, depending on the market, it's actually down a little bit year over year. Compared to the national average of around $485,000, you've got yourself a huge bargain, especially if you're a first-time home buyer or someone, cashing out of a major metropolitan area. You're really going to see massive savings in the area of housing costs. Now, there's different types of homes that you might be looking for. So obviously, lake homes would be one of the big things people are looking for, thinking about moving to the Brainerd Lakes area. So the Gull Lake chain or the Whitefish chain, those would be some things you might think about. Of course, we have about almost 500 lakes here in the Brainerd Lakes area. So not all lakes are created equal, and we're going to have different prices based on what you're looking for exactly. So certainly can reach out to us and we can help you figure out what you really want, or what you're looking for, or what you should be looking for maybe. When it comes to lake homes in this area, generally speaking, the entry level is going to be somewhere between $400,000 to $600,000 for an entry level lake home. And again, there's many variables in there. Some lakes, you can't even get a lake lot for that price, okay? Especially when you're looking at the Whitefish chain and Gull Lake, those are going to be, I think some of the prices are up towards closer to $12,000 per front foot along the shoreline. So you got a 100-foot lot, that's a $1.2 million lot before you even start building a house. So, but that scales down significantly depending on which lake you're on and what type of shoreline. Now, luxury lake homes, you're going to be at least $1 million and above. Depending on the lake too, you might be on a smaller, less desirable lake, and what was considered luxury may be a little bit less than that, but kind of plan on at least $1 million for a luxury lakefront home. The median lake home in the Brainerd Lakes area is about $800,000. Now, when it comes to non-lake homes, there's certainly quite a few of those as well. I want to just look at the prices for in-town non-lake homes. So think in Baxter, Breezy Point, Brainerd, Crosby, like in town. Those entry-level homes are going to be around $2.25 to $3.25. There are some that are still under $200,000. They're probably going to need a little bit of work, or they're going to be quite small too. So there are plenty of homes that are quite affordable. And then when it comes to new construction, we're talking $350 to $450. $350 home is going to be 2-bed, 1-bath, slab home with an attached garage, probably 1,100, 1,200 square feet. It's going to be pretty small. So if you want something a little bit larger, you got any kids, they're going to be, or if there's more than one or two of you, it's probably going to be closer to that $450 price range just because of the size difference. What do we get from that? You can certainly still buy a legit home for under 300,000 in Brainerd, which is massively less than the national average. It might not be right on the lake, but sometimes you can be very close. Then you don't have the hassle of the upkeep and maintenance of, shoreline and all that kind of stuff that goes with living on the lake. Okay, moving along to other costs in the Brainerd Lakes area is electric bills. So utilities, heating, which we really get a reality check come winter, right? Electric bills in Minnesota average $177 a month. And now that's going to depend on if you have natural gas heat, or maybe you use wood furnace for heat, or some combination of those, and you don't have any electric heat. Well, that obviously going to bring your electric bill is going to be quite a bit lower. But winter gas bills can also be pretty high, but natural gas is much cheaper than electric, so to heat your home. So average heating costs in the Brainerd area from like January through March can range from like $250 to $450 a month. If you're using propane or natural gas, depending on insulation, square footage, and whether your windows are old or how much insulation you have in your attic, a lot of variables there. Our home approaching 100 years old, so a lot of the windows are still original. Not a very well insulated home, that's for sure. And we have some areas like the basement that is electric heat, and an addition that is also electric heat. I think January, February, our electric bill is usually somewhat $500 a month, plus the natural gas, which is only like $70 a month for the rest of the house. That's certainly a factor you want to think about when looking at homes, is what type of heat they utilize with the sources. So a tip might be to, get a home energy audit. It could save you hundreds of dollars every year. Or if you just move into a newer home with better windows and insulation and all that, then that could also help keep those costs down. All right, next costs would be the transportation costs. If you're used to city traffic, buying gasoline in larger areas, metropolitan areas, you might be used to $4 a gallon gas or upwards of $5 a gallon gas. Looking at you, California. Then welcome to the land of no traffic and reasonably priced fuel. Average Minnesota regular gasoline price per gallon in April of 2025, $3.20 a gallon. The gas stations closest to where I live here, just last night actually, I saw were $2.79 a gallon. That's quite a bit lower than the state average, especially compared to other areas like California, especially the West Coast, or out east in New York or something like that. So when it comes to gasoline, fuel, pretty good up here. Just you have to drive everywhere, right? We don't have much for public transportation. The city of Brainerd has a city bus that's pretty minimal. You'll want a car in most places in the Brainerd Lakes area. You'll have those costs, but you're not going to rack up $1,000 a month spending on Uber. Your commute time is not going to be much at all, especially if you're in Brainerd or Baxter. You're going to have 5-10 minute commutes to pretty much anywhere. That's when it comes to transportation costs, you're definitely overall going to be less than the national average, especially if you're coming from a large metropolitan area. All right, the next section on cost would be like groceries, everyday items. So this is where it really gets fun, because this is one where it can really change a lot. Food costs, that's going to be a big impact on families, right? And well, anybody, not just families, just people, anybody who eats to stay alive, right? Milk in the Brainerd Lakes area was at $3.75 a gallon compared to the national average of $4 a gallon. And then a dozen eggs were quite a bit cheaper at $2.49 per dozen compared to $4.21 for the national average. But here is the catch. Grocery prices, as we all know, are up 28% since 2019, according to the food group. That number seems low. If I were to really dig into it, I think it's probably higher than that. But we all know prices are going up. They have gone up quite a bit in the last few years, especially we've seen with the egg debacle, but those prices are coming down again. So thankful for that. But it's important to remember that, while the Brainerd area is still much cheaper than bigger cities, don't expect to feed a family of 4 for $50 a week unless you're living on ramen noodles. Wouldn't even plan to feed an individual $50 a week. So those days are long gone. Restaurants are certainly, there's a ton of different restaurant options. There's local restaurants, locally owned, national, like chain restaurant options, kind of everything you'd expect anywhere else. Prices are going to be relatively similar to anywhere else in the country, minus sales taxes or anything like that, which we'll get to actually in a moment. All right, so the next cost to consider is healthcare costs in Minnesota. In the Brainerd Lakes area, the Minnesota healthcare system is pretty solid in terms of things being paid for, taken care of. You're not having to worry about something once you get to the hospital, but it's not cheap, right? The average individual plan on the MinSure plan is $420 a month. So you're going to want to plan ahead with HSAs or supplemental insurance, especially if you are near retirement age or got any chronic conditions or anything like that. Keep in mind, I'm a real estate agent. I am not some medical or healthcare advisor in any capacity, just speaking from my own experience. Our family, we're on a members of a company that is a Christian health sharing plan. And so our is basically like a high deductible plan, basically. So that has really saved our family quite a bit of money. A lot of resources online you can take a look at for health costs in Minnesota. A lot of healthcare companies, brands, insurance companies are based out of Minnesota, so we should be pioneers in that area, I would think. Now let's go ahead and get to taxes. Obviously, that's a big burden for many people, is their tax bill, right? No matter what state you're living in, you're going to be paying some sort of taxes, and it's going to be, how they split it up is going to vary. Some states will have a higher income tax and lower property taxes and maybe a lower sales tax or some combination of that, right? Probably what matters most is what do you actually end up paying in reality. Minnesota has a graduated individual state income tax, which ranges from 5.35% to 9.85%. And then we have a property tax average. It's actually the effective tax rate average, at least for Crow Wing County, which is most of the large portion of the Brainerd Lakes area, is 0.79% in 2023, which resulted in actual property taxes paid of $2,161. Compared to the rest of the country, we're actually fairly low, not zero like Florida, which I would like to be at, but it's not as high as it could be, that's for sure. And then there's vehicle registration fees, which is based on the manufacturer's retail price and age of the vehicle. So that first year you buy that vehicle, it can be pretty steep. So if you're buying a brand new vehicle, that can be pretty expensive. Buying a used car, it's not going to be as much, right? Sales tax in Minnesota is 6.875%, which is the 6th highest in the country. There's also local sales tax tacked on top of that. The most of Crow Wing County, or the Brainerd Lakes area for the most part, has a total sales tax of 7.375%, which compared to the national rent, if you were to rank that nationally, it'd be like number 19 or 20 highest. So not so bad, but also Minnesota doesn't tax food like groceries or clothing. What is actually collected, Minnesota ranks 8th highest most collected. So on average, it's like $6,000 per capita annually in state taxes. So there is that, but in the Brainerd Lakes area, housing is so much more affordable than the rest of the country. And then you're not paying taxes on groceries, sales tax on groceries or clothing. The essentials, really, that you can really keep your expenses down quite a bit when it comes to a tax burden. And if you have any kind of write-offs or deductions of some sort, you can really keep a lot of those expenses when it comes to your tax bill down quite a bit. Since we're on the topic of taxes, which is actually a big portion of the property taxes go towards funding of public schools here in Minnesota. And the average per pupil spending for K through 12 in Minnesota was just over $18,000, which ranks fairly high compared to the rest of the country, especially considering the median household income of $87,000. Which is one of the highest in the country as well. All right, so here's the deal. Compared to the rest of the country, especially the coast, the east and the west coast, and even the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul, Brainerd is still very affordable. If you want a strong local economy here in the Brainerd Lakes area that's diverse, if you want more house and lake for your money, and if you want a slower pace of life without sacrificing all the amenities of living in a larger city per se, then Brainerd is absolutely worth considering. Just Don't expect to heat that 4,000 square foot home with dreams and only firewood. Reality is probably going to be natural gas, electric, things that are going to cost real money. So you have to factor in, unfortunately, those realities of costs of utilities. Never a fun thing to pay for, but it is a reality. All right, if you're thinking about making a move to the Brainerd Lakes area, reach out, shoot me a call, text, email, or book a Zoom meeting using the link below. I'd absolutely love to help you make your dreams come true, moving to the Brainerd Lakes area, find that dream home. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap that bell for notifications because I have more videos every single week. And until next time, I'll see you around the Brainerd Lakes area.